On this episode of Game Shack, I'm going to show you guys what kind of computer you need for a state-of-the-art virtual pinball game, what kind of monitor, all the kind of basics. I'm going to tell you about what I would do different if I were building a V-Pin from scratch right now. All that and more coming up next. Hey everybody, welcome on back into the Game Shack. I'm your host JDV for Evil Genius Entertainment. Thank you for stopping by, guys. If it's your first time here, welcome on into the shack. And if you're a regular viewer, thanks a lot for supporting the channel. You can really help this channel by giving me a thumbs up. It really does help the algorithm, I guess. And of course, subscribe and hit the notification bell if you do subscribe. What I did when I built my pinball game was use the best of everything, the best screen, the best cords, the best wiring, everything that I could maximize the performance out of the machine, because I figured, look, this is only one of one. I'm not going to build multiple ones. I want to build the ultimate V-Pin up to my capacity. So I went with the OLED. I went with the C2 LG 42-inch screen, and 42-inch normal 16:9 screen is almost exactly the right width of a normal pinball game. Here you can see real pinball glass. That's for a Stern and or Williams, whichever the case may be, but it's a real pinball glass that I got from Marco's, and you see it fits almost perfectly over a 42-inch monitor, right? So problem solved. Get yourself a 42-inch OLED and you're done. Move on to the PC. Well, it's not that easy. And that's because while it is almost perfectly the right width if you have a 42-inch 16:9 screen, you're going to be like 4 or 5 inches short on the upper end, on the vertical part of the screen if you get a 42-incher. So that'd probably be the one major thing that I change on my build, is going from a 42-incher to a 48. When you go to 48, you're almost like within 2-3 centimeters of having a perfectly sized vertical screen for a real world pinball. Problem is that it's going to be too wide. It'll be, well, for wide bodies it'll be almost perfect, but for normal pinball games a 48 or 50-inch monitor is going to be just a little too wide. So in VPX it's easy enough to shrink in the sides. You can do that in future pinball as well. It's a little tougher to do in Steam because it really doesn't, you can tell Steam what sort of resolution you're running, and you can change the size of the DMD and things like that, but it is much harder to actually nail exactly how wide or tall the screen is. You don't have as many abilities to change the aspect ratio. So depending on whether or not you're aiming towards more of a Steam build or more of a VPX or kind of a hybrid of those two, that might affect what size screen you get. Anyway, I'll link down to a really good video that talks about the ramifications of both sizes. Because I've had the 42 now for 2.5 years, I want to try the 48 just because I want to try the 48. But you can definitely get away with the 42. You just can chop off the bottom apron and maybe a little bit of the top of the playfield. Then you can get it very, very close to feeling it. But 48 probably is just a little bit more real. But again, if you're looking at Steam games, maybe go with the 42. So you might be wondering what kind of cabinet I have. I built my own cabinet. In fact, the whole series of how I built this machine is in a playlist. I'll link it up there, and there'll be a link down in the description below, and you can see that I step by step just kind of built this thing from scratch out of wood that I got from Lowe's, and I got the graphics from Game On Graphics, a local company here in Michigan that does a great job. And then I just kind of put it together from scratch. I didn't have any plans. I built my cabinet around the size of my monitor. That way I knew it would fit perfectly, as opposed to if you buy a pinball machine, like a real pinball machine that's had all the guts torn out of it, your monitor may or may not fit into that, right? So it's a little trickier, and I wanted to make sure that I had the minimum footprint for my V-Pin that would still fit a 42-inch screen. So check out that video if you're looking at building it. The way I would go now is I would just try to find a real world pinball game. I would know the dimensions of my monitor first so that when I went to go buy it, I could measure it out and make sure it would fit. but they are actually pretty easy to build. I mean, really, it's just a pine box or an MDF box, right? I mean, it's not rocket science to build a box, but to make it look slick and everything else like that is a little bit more difficult. I don't have lockdown bars or anything like that. I have like little furniture nubs, I guess, for the corners of my pinball game, and that works just fine. Back box I got from Game Room Solutions. I would probably just build it from scratch now, but when I was building this 2.5 years ago, I was kind of running out of steam and running out of time, and I really wanted to get the thing complete it before it got kind of left half complete and got destroyed or whatever. So I'm not sure what I spent on it. I think I want to say $250, $300. They did a little custom job for me. It wasn't perfect. I had to fudge a few things. They're kind of notorious for not having maybe the best quality control. However, the graphics look fantastic, and after I made a few little adjustments, I easily could put in a 32-inch monitor for the main back glass, and I got a what is it, a 9:10. I got a very like a weird aspect ratio for the DMD, because that's what DMDs used to look like. In terms of the cords I use, I try to get the highest speed HDMI cords that you can get, because any little bit of delay in pinball can be lethal, right? So you really want to try to get the higher speed cords. Don't skimp on that. You know, just spend your extra $4 and get the really high speed ones. Now, does that really make a difference? I don't know, but anytime that I could spend just a little bit more money to get just a little bit better quality, I did. Again, figuring that I'm only going to be building this once, so why not? In terms of the encoder and buttons, I just use a standard $25, $20 kit that you can get off of Amazon. That should work. Yeah, I've highlighted the one that worked for me. Now you have to get a special encoder if you use a plunger. I didn't bother using the plunger because about half the games just have auto launch anyway, and you can set it up in your VPX settings so that the plunger comes back real slow if you just push the button. So you can get very nuanced shots that way as well. And because I rage quit sometimes, I just want to be able to get right on into it. So I did not install a plunger, and also because it hit the door that this Game Shack is here. Like, I have my build here right against where the door is into the shack. So I didn't want anybody blasting my plunger. Anyway, I didn't get that, but you have to get a special encoder if you are going to use a plunger. Just be aware of that. In terms of the speakers I just used cheap car speakers, 20 bucks I think a pair, maybe 30, something like that. Don't skimp too much on that because you really do want to have some sound. I do have 2 bass puck thumpers. I'm thinking about adding a powered subwoofer on there. Sound is so important to Virtual Pinball, so be prepared to spend a little bit of money there, maybe a couple $100 in total when you talk about the speakers, the wires, and the amps, and everything like that. Okay, so now we're going to get to the real meat of the episode, and the thing that I changed from when I first built this 2.5 years ago to what I run now. And basically what I ran when I first started this was a full-on PC, a big old honking mainframe, video card, the whole 9 yards. But what I did do is get a mini PC with Oculink. And what is Oculink? Oculink is basically like a USB 4/Thunderbolt that allows you to use an outboard video card that's separate from the mini PC, and you hook it up using Oculink, and it is basically like if the video card was sitting in the computer. It is lightning fast. In terms of what video card, I just run a 3060 Ti, which is getting to be kind of an older card at this point. That's probably about as high as you need to go. Now, of course, games get, more demanding with time. Anyway, with the 3060 and this Gem 12, I set everything to maximum. I set everything in VPX to maximum, everything in Steam. I just crank it all the way up, and maybe 1 or 2 games I'll have stuttering, but that's literally it. Out of hundreds and hundreds of different games on, half a dozen different type of game systems that run VPN, none of them stutter other than a few. So yeah, I hope you found that useful. VPN, is not super easy to set up. It can be kind of daunting. you can really set this thing up for $2,000. It is absolutely possible to do. And in fact, now as some things have come down, like the OLED prices, you can get a 42-inch brand new OLED now for $800. Heck, on some of these off brands, you might be able to get a 48-inch OLED for $800. No way could you have done that 2 years ago. So some things have actually started to come down. Other components like these mini PCs and some of these mid-tier video cards, they've started to come down a little bit too. So you legitimately could build one that looks exactly like mine for around 2 G's, and you could build one that is a little less souped up for maybe $1,000. So that versus, you know, $1,500 to $2,000 on the 4KP, that's going to be up to you. All right, if you found this episode helpful at all, please give me a thumbs up. It really does help the channel. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell if you do. All right, love each other, and until next time, I'll see you guys here in the Game Shack. Mwah! Happy pinballing? Happy balling? Can I say that?
Be sure to visit evilgeniusentertainment.com for exclusive content, swag, casting call news, and much, much more.